start with the Punk Rock Museum. That's something
That's
that is
the shiniest penny that we could start off with.
it's a very shiny penny, and so uh, we've worked together on a few occasions and some things over the years. It's been awesome. It's always awesome. The tiki package that you did for the Inevitables, the Sweetwater Coffee collab, which was really cool. My book, and all that to say, you're always working on projects. So, right? It seems that
Yeah,
way.
I over the last maybe 2.5 years, it's been a lot less than I was accustomed to, just because the museum was such a mammoth undertaking. Literally starting a new business of that size from the ground up, from an idea, right? Amongst Fat Mike and Lisa Brownlee going, hey, I want to do a punk shop. Hey, we should add artifacts. Oh shit, Vinny, do you want to do some merch for it? Yeah, that would be cool. Oh shit, it's not a punk shop anymore. It's a museum, and this is what we're going to start to do. And uh, it is a lot, man. Like just the sort of finding, getting, and taking care of the artifacts, storing, cataloging is a mammoth undertaking unto itself. Let alone a retail store from the ground up, a bar from the ground up, a tattoo shop that's coming from the ground up. So there's a lot of uh, tentacles to this many-headed beast.
Absolutely, and I can only imagine. And I definitely want to go a little bit more in depth in some of what you just talked about. But the first thing is the group of all of you that came together. I've read that you guys call it the Punk Collective,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how did that group come together? Where did it start? How did everybody kind of decide, like, this is who it is, this is who it's going to
You
be?
know what? Without trying to weave it too deep, idea started that Mike wanted to move to Las Vegas and open up a punk rock shop. And he had worked with Lisa Brownlee. Lisa Brownlee is tour manager, but also tour manager of Warped Tour. So knew a lot of bands, knew a lot of people, has been like a figurehead in punk rock scene for a very long time. Uh, so they were talking, a few days, bouncing ideas back and forth about this punk rock shop. And Lisa said, hey, we should add some kind of artifacts, just make it cool. And that basically spun it into Mike inviting me to do merch and being a part of it, and kind of, just on the creative side of it. Then there was three other people, this guy Gary, Jeb, and Max. Uh, and that was the start of it, right? And that was the framework of starting to building the business from the skeleton out. And then we, along the way, you add friends that you've known and business people that you respect into the inner workings. But the Punk Collective, besides the people that were building it, Punk Collective also umbrellas the investors, and the investors are more so who you're talking about. You have Tony Hawk as an investor, Mark Hoppus as an investor, Shepard Fairey is an investor. Uh, you know, uh, you start to go down that list of people that kind of believe in the idea and are pushing it forward amongst this sort of punk collective uh, idea. It starts to get pretty gnarly, man. Like, and it's never, dude. If you think that out of nowhere coming to somebody, hey, we're gonna need we're gonna do a museum, we're gonna open a museum, can you give us your stuff? Most people are like, fuck no, I'm not giving you anything, right? Like, but but with that said, through a lot of friends and acquaintances and business people and friends of friends, you started to hobble this together, and then it started to gain steam, and then all of a sudden, uh, towards the end of it, it was, oh shit, we got Billy Joe's blue guitar, right? The guitar from Billy Joe, right? And you start to kind of land these bigger things. It's awesome. Uh, the the point of all that is that on the surface you go, well, how could it possibly work when there's literally, I forget, 231 people between investors, contributors, people who work, that actually work inside the museum confines of the business. How does it really work? I mean, it works just like any other business, man. Like
Yeah.
there's no magic wand to making a business work, right? And I've started businesses, I've started brands, I've worked in those confines, I've pushed those things forward, but uh, nothing, nothing ever is I. It's always we, and you we called that out early on. It's a collective. It's not I'm doing this. It's not I'm doing that. It's we are doing this. We as the collective are doing that. So it's a mindset you have to go to it with, because if it's an I mindset, we wouldn't have gotten out of the gate.
So you're talking about the different artifacts and things that you try to go after. Was there anything out of the gate that was like, we have to get this, or was it more of an open-ended, what can we get?
Well, it all starts, with the idea of, hey, what do we want to see, and hey, what are the bands that we ultimately want to have, and that's the starting point. So there was lists written, and then there were lists revised, and then there was those revised lists were revised again, and uh, you start to form a story, right? And the fact is, with the museum, it's a chronological look at punk rock starting at New York in the 70s. So, New York in the 70s, the UK in the 70s, 80s California, 80s New York hardcore, and you start Southern California punk, Northern California punk, and international bands, and it starts to go through, and then this sort of 90s big pop of like when punk broke, right? And then 2000s 2000 to the present is upstairs, and that's a lot of Warped Tour, a lot of sort of modern bands, and it's always funny to me. uh People are like, oh, I really liked the downstairs, but I didn't really care for the upstairs. And then there's people who are like, oh, I love the upstairs. It's Warped Tour, and that was my time of this band and this band, and like this is the current band I like. I can't believe that they're represented in the museum. And it goes to show you that punk rock as well, it jives with everything, that it's all when you find it, that's the stuff that you're attracted to the most, like so
Yeah, oh yeah.
people in the 90s used to go like, oh, I found your band for Less Than Jake, I found your band, and I Losing Streak's your favorite, and my favorite record, it's your best record, right? And then there's other people who are like, you know what, man? Like, I found your band, and it was Borders and Boundaries, like, and that's your best record. And I always laugh, because it really is when people find something and they take possession and ownership of it. Uh, that's their spot, and it's that sweet spot of a band, right? And uh, it's when you actually have this passion for something, that's the light that turns on over their head. So it's hard to talk people out of like, no, you should go check out this. I don't know about that.
There are still good bands, coming out of the woodwork. So, I think it's important that, that's very true. We're all guilty of that. I know I'm guilty of it. Very very protective of the era of the '90s whenever I first started discovering everything. But I never want to be that person that says there's no good bands coming out. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it's not true. Like it doesn't matter what you think. It's just
Yeah,
it's not a valid statement. It's not a true statement, right? Because
yeah.
for me, there's super exciting bands that are out there. You have a band like Turnstile
Oh
who
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
repeatedly, you know, morphing into something more exciting record after record. And you have Scowl and you have Gel, and like there's just really good and creative hardcore that's happening. One of the bands I like a bunch is Cancer Christ, and they're from the Bay Area. I love it, and it just you have to open up your mind. You have to do a little bit more digging. It's easy to like flip on Spotify and go, "Oh yeah, I'm going to listen to the record that I listened to in 1996. It's comfortable. It's like a good shirt, right? Like,
Sure, yeah.
but sometimes you have to step outside, find some things, and connect with some things out of your comfort zone."
It's very that's well said. It's interesting because there are a lot of different avenues that you can discover music, but it seems that there is a lot more digging necessary now. Um, in an era whenever radio is almost not really a factor. I'm here in Columbus, Ohio, and there's this amazing independent radio station, 92.9, and they play so many of these great bands you just don't hear on other radio stations. So that's the DJs there are a
Yep.
wealth of knowledge, and it's really fun to talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, Columbus is an anomaly, right? It's uh, uh, my wife used to live there, and she told me, and it started to make sense, right? It's like uh, considering like for R&D for brands, everything from McDonald's, Burger King, but go down to clothing brands. It's considered Columbus is considered like a great cross section of what America is supposed to be. So it's a test market, right?
Yeah,
That's unlike any other place that's in the United States. So it doesn't surprise me there's great bands that come from there. It doesn't surprise me that there's great artists, great actors, great because it is this sort of like boiling pot that's a very unique city that's unlike a lot of other cities.
yeah, it's cool. I've been here for about 4.5, 5 years. I dig it. It's yeah, good. A lot of good art coming out of here for sure. Um, I want to go back to something you talked a little bit about a moment ago with the museum before we get off that completely. Talking about, going through the different eras of punk through the years. Aside from that, is there anything you could tell me about the guest experience, or is there something in particular that you're excited about with the guest experience? I know you mentioned a
Well, I
bar,
mean,
a tattoo
here's
parlor.
the thing, right? You have if you kind of like float through the bottom of the museum, you're like, oh, okay. You get to the sort of it looks like a downstairs basement, like it's sort of the center point of the museum, right? As this like wood paneling, and it's like if you were growing up, that was the spot that you would wind up in when you're growing up, right? Like your downstairs basement, and like you play drums or guitar and kind of do that. But uh, you go from that point into the bar, which is an experience unto itself. It's a museum with a bar, and that's fairly unique experience to being in a museum. But go upstairs. There's a mezzanine. That's a tattoo shop that is opening May 15th. It shares a space with the chapel, so you could get married in space.
That's
Well
awesome.
as we're offering wakes if you want to have like a sort of memorial thing, right? But the
Yeah.
most interesting thing I think as far as experience and unique too, actually, one second floor there's a jam room. Right now there's over 20 guitars and basses that you could play. So in there, Fat Mike's bass guitar, and you could play it through his whole rig that he recorded whatever record on. Right, I'm spacing on it. Uh,
So the actual
the
equipment.
actual equipment. So everyone from
Wow.
Fletcher from Pennywise, Zach from Rise Against, Joan Jett. You can sit down, play Joan Jett's guitar, and these are instruments that were used to write, record, and tour for the artist. So that to me is like a very unique and very cool thing to be able to do, right?
Oh
But
yeah.
the second part of that, we've been having punk tour guides come, so you can walk the museum with a punk guide, and you can pick and choose of when they come. So let's say right now you have Lou Collar from Sick of It All is at the museum. Casey Royer, who played in DI and Social Distortion, is at the museum. So you can go in there and you can walk the museum and hear stories and have them tell their story about punk rock music. And Fat Mike and Smelly from No Effects, they both did it. And it's if you ever read the book that they did, those guys have great stories, right? Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
uh, it's just one of those things, man. To be able to hear the history of punk rock from people who lived it, uh, is pretty damn cool.
Are you ever gonna do any tours yourself?
I don't know if I am. I know that Chris from Less Than Jake, he's going there next week to do like 3 or 4 days of tours, right? For me, I know the museum a lot. I probably will do it one day. Uh, and frankly, I'd probably just hang out upstairs in the 90s, the 2000s, because that's,
Yeah.
Fueled by Ramen. There's a lot of bands that I had worked with that are represented up in that area, and uh, that to me, while Less Than Jake started in the early 90s, and we cut our teeth with a lot of contemporaries in the 90s, right? But it wasn't until that new wave of bands started to pop that you went, oh, this is where like music is going, right? And that's, the Fallout Boys of this world. That's Taking Back Sundays. That's My Chemical Romance. It's where AFI went from being a hardcore band to being a really, really good sort of like commercial punk band. Alkaline Trio went from sort of demo quality songs to like, wow, this is fucking amazing, and
Yeah.
I like floating in that area. There's plenty of stories and plenty of cool uh, bands to talk about up there.
Is that? Would you say that's your favorite era?
Not necessarily, man. I started,
I know it's hard to pick.
I can't really pick, right? It's
No.
when I first started listening to punk rock music, I have a brother that's 4 years older than me. I grew up in New Jersey. So around when I was 9, I listened to my first punk rock record, right? And by 13, I was going to see matinee shows in New York City and in Jersey City. And from that point, I fell in love with punk rock music, and that's the thing that's punk rock music's given me everything that I have, right? And uh, it's if you pull apart all of the things I've done, it's the one thread that is continuous.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, wanted to ask you one more thing about the tours. Is that having the artists lead the tours? Is that going to be a permanent
It is.
fixture, or is that the opening?
It's
Yeah.
a permanent fixture, yeah.
There's no shortage of folks that you could bring in to do that. So I think that's such a cool element.
You know what? It's one of those things where you go. You would think that it would be an endless supply of people available, but Vegas is pretty far from everywhere, man. Like, so it's being,
Yeah, fair enough.
peel someone over, off of where they're at or where they're not on tour and they want to do it. Uh, you have like dudes like Chris number 2 from Anti-Flag, he was there, and he slayed those tours, man. But he would, right? Like,
Sure. Yeah,
if you
yeah,
follow him on social media, if you like Anti-Flag, that dude is a powerhouse of like thought and action and things like that. And the same thing goes. We just had Eugene from Go Go Bordello and this past weekend, and that dude, if you like the band and the band and and follow Eugene on social media, dude is just a firecracker, man. That seeing the tour is like this extended hang, this extended meet and greet. It's hearing stories. It's sort of absorbing yourself in people like Eugene and Chris Numbers Two's energy, right? And that's
yeah.
cool to me.
I think it's amazing, and both of those gentlemen you just mentioned would be such a fun tour to have either of them lead that. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, for the reasons that you just said. Well, let's go into a little bit about Less Than Jake here briefly for a moment. And I'm sure somewhere along the line you've possibly answered this question, but I don't know the answer to this. Obviously, you were a co-founder of the band, so involved, uh, on so many levels and so many aspects with that band for so long. And what was 2018, 19? You left the band.
It was the very end of 18. Yeah.
So what was the factor in leaving after being really one of the main creative forces behind that band for so long?
Uh, uh, it's complicated, right? And I'll be
Sure.
as briefly. I'm going to be as brief and but as crystal clear as possible, right? It's that with Less Than Jake, uh, there was a point in time where we were on tour, and then uh, it wasn't a big deal. We didn't have kids. It didn't matter. Hey, you guys are going to go on tour from, 3 weeks, come home for a week, go back on tour for 4 weeks, come home for 2 weeks, go back on tour for 9 weeks. And without having a kid, it's not a big deal. Right. And then, uh, I had a daughter, and, uh, and then it started to become too much. It started to be, how much am I missing, right? And I and this is not a humble brag. It's not meant to be like, oh, look at me. But I've circled the globe a whole shitload of times, man. Like, and the fact is, like, I'm never gonna get those times back with my daughter. There's not gonna be time back with my wife. And I wanted to surf that wave with them. I wanted to experience like the future and not fragments of the future, right? I didn't want to be staring down like a teenager going, "Hey, I spent half the time that you've been alive home," right? Uh,
Yeah.
so that's number one. Family first, and while Less Than Jake, I love and passionate about. I'm more passionate about my daughter and my wife, right? And that lifestyle needed to change, right? That's first and foremost. Second, on that, uh, I had uh, broke my foot. It was, if anyone's figuring this out, uh, during February tour, we were going out on tour with 4 Years Strong, right? And we were doing a short run, but that was the beginning run that went through, uh, a small tour in the U.S. and international touring, and then and ended with Warp Tour, right? Uh, the second day in February, I had broke my foot and tore 2 ligaments on my kick drum uh, ankle, right? Uh, and I toured for from February till August on that, and dude, my foot would swell up, turn black and blue. I would ice it. The swelling would go down. Uh, I would get up, go play drums on it again. It would re-black and blue, re-bruise, and re-swell. And that was 6 months of that. And there was a point in time going, like, I am I hurting myself permanently? Like, am I doing this? And it was one of the loneliest time of being on tour, right? It was, why am I on tour?
Yeah,
And it came to the point where it was like I had to detach myself from being there to really get the clarity of, dude, like, why are you putting yourself through this sort of physical sort of roller coaster with your body, when all you have to do is say, I can't do it, right? So uh,
sure.
you take that and then you push it in the mental sort of headspace of like, hey, I want to enjoy the future going forward, and it just didn't line up, man. Like, and anyone who knows me knows that, like, I like ate and slept and breathed less than Jake. Like, everything about it, business side, merchandise size, creative direction side, lyrics, everything, dude. And it can't,
Yeah.
and
Oh
I
yeah.
but I couldn't reconcile the future, and nobody else really in less than Jake wanted to engage in what that was.
Understood. Yeah. I know it was a shock to me whenever I found out that you were going to be leaving the band. So I appreciate the insight there into that. So thank you for that. That's very interesting to know. Um, and I know since then you did the Inevitables, which I mentioned briefly
Mhm.
to start the show. Um, so what's going on with that? It's been a little quiet on the Inevitables front lately. Are you guys still an active
You
band?
know what? It's we have a second LP that's already written, uh, but if we go back to the top of this conversation, usually I have a whole lot of projects that are going at the same time. It's just my bandwidth with the museum. It gobbles up uh, the creative side, the business side, the time side, every side. It gobbles it up for the moment, right? Uh,
Sure.
and that doesn't mean that there's things that are going. That doesn't mean that there's nothing going on behind the scenes, because there is when it comes to the music front. But uh, it'll just have to wait a hot second before it starts to move into an active place.
That's good to know because you guys are a great band. I become a big fan of the Inevitable. Super super enjoyable. Kind of like, I mean, you tell me, but it's like reggae, punk, ska, surf. I guess like it's just super fun. Yeah,
It takes kind of it is a genre bender, right? Like, and
yeah, yeah.
and I had played some of the new songs for Fat Mike, and he was like, it sounds like you guys are like heavily influenced by like Danny Elfman, right, from Oingo Boingo. And I went, you're kind of right, like,
It's like sure, yeah.
and it just, we have been mashing a lot together, and uh, we wrote a lot of reggae for LP2. So now we were like, damn, there's a lot of reggae. We gotta write some more. We've been writing punk songs. So
Got to balance it out a little
yeah,
bit.
a lot of reggae was written, man. And my inside of my like being, I always like, sort of darker edged uh music. So, all the reggae that we're writing is not like a bright and shiny reggae. It's very like sort of minor chord and a little bit eerie sound, and that's cool. So we have plenty of those songs, and then we'll get to the other ones soon enough.
And that's one of the things that I loved about your first album was just fun, almost dancey music, but you're talking about like real stuff, real shit, like the age of anxiety for crying out loud. You know what I mean? It's just really talking about some deep issues that, you know, I don't know if they're autobiographical for anybody in the band, but I know I took my meaning from them, and I, as you do with music, you place meaning to them and how you associate that from your experiences, right? So
I mean,
yeah,
that's the beautiful thing about art, right? It's that you run it through your own filter, and what you come out with is decidedly your experience, right?
yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely,
sometimes, there's some artists, musicians, visual artists, designers, whatever, alike, that they have that juju enough to uh, kind of put the masses in a trance, right? So without watering down, uh, and that's the true talent, right? Where you can create art and then it taps into like a mainstream psyche, right? And you're not trying to tap
yeah,
into it, you're just doing good art and people are recognizing good art.
yeah,
It's awesome.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, 100%, agree with that. You mentioned Fueled by Ramen a little bit ago, and obviously you're the co-founder or founder outright of Fueled by Ramen, Sleep It Off Records, and Paper and Plastic. Um, how did, or if they did at all, which I'm sure they did, how did the experience with each of those labels differ for you? Is there any like standout, like hardships getting them off the ground, or really momentous moments, during that period for
I
you?
mean, the only thing I can sort of point to and answer at first is that they're all done for different reasons, right? And Sleep It Off was just, hey, we're gonna do Less Than Jake records here, so that's just became
Right.
a place to collect our back catalog and push it into one place, right? And uh,
Sure.
Paper and Plastic was just, hey, I don't care what it is. If I like it, I'm gonna put it out. Like, and it never, I was never trying to go, hey, I'm gonna try to find the next big band. I'm gonna, I'm not gonna treat this necessarily like a business. I'm gonna treat this as a creative security blanket, right? Of doing the stuff that I want to do when I want to do it. Period. Right. I do a lot of toys
Yeah.
and graphic novels and a lot of trick vinyl before it was super popular. Right, where be die cuts and folds and crazy looking records and putting coffee grinds and the burnt Bible ashes into vinyl and things like that, right? Like, so for me, Paper and Plastic was this sort of creative outlet and sort of more modern art than it was a record label. Fueled by, though, on the other hand, that was, we want to find bands and we want to sell a lot of records, period. This is a business. This is the business of music. It's not sort of, oh, it's casual, right? It became the
Sure.
business of music, right? That has its pitfalls and it has its sprints to the top, right? And that's cool. And discovered a lot of cool bands and cool friends and doing all of them, right? But shaking out, if I said it and I'll bring it back to it, if you run a line through all of this stuff, toys and record labels and Less Than Jake, and it's everything like that. If you run a line through it, that line that's through everything is punk rock music, right? It's the love of punk rock. It's the idea that punk rock, you don't have to wait for people. You can do it yourself, right? You don't have to wait for someone to sign you if you're in a band. You can do it yourself. If you have passion to become a mixologist, right? We're speaking of that. There's no one to stop you from progressing in that art, right? If you write poetry, you can do it. You don't have to sit idly by and wait for someone to come and go, you're invited to the party now. right? Because,
make your own party,
well,
right?
it's make your own party for sure. But punk rock music to me has always been uh, do it yourself.
Absolutely.
And if you
Yeah.
start to look through that common factor through everything that I've done in the creative front, right, and business front, it runs the true gamut of punk rock music, the ethos of doing it myself, doing it on my own terms, and the minute that it sort of takes left of center, uh, those are not my terms anymore, and they have to be things have to. My true north has to recalibrate on where I want it to go.
Right on. Yeah. And you mentioned it was something I was going to ask you about. So it's appropriate that you brought it up yourself. A lot of like the designer toys, the collectible, super limited edition and stuff. Uh, what is it about that world and that form of art that really speaks to you?
Well, it all depends what you're talking about, right? It's that there's some, if on the top level of it, it's art, right? And it moves you how personally how art should move you, right? And then there's other points that taps into uh, memories, taps into the past. Being a little kid and scouring through the cereal box to find this like little piece of plastic that comes out of it, right? And being able to, as an adult, replicate this of what I want and put it out, right?
Is that the blueberry
It is.
ghost?
It's cause, right? The blueberry goes, right? So, but it's being able to uh, remember the things that you love and then put them in a modern context, right? And some
Yeah.
people do it where they go, oh well, now that I've grown up, now here's my man cave, right? I have my video games and I have my pool table and I big my couch. Uh, I never got a man cave. I got, hey, I'm going to put out, uh, 35 resin skulls that have a bullet blossom in it. I'm going to put out, some weird comic book, or I'm going to do a poetry book, and that's my man cave, kind of. I'm old enough to go, oh, this is what I love, and this is what I loved, and this is how I can sort of take the memories and push them into the present, or take the present and push it into the future. That it's just, again, like, it's ways for me to interconnect everything together. And that was with Less Than Jake is the same thing, right? Lyrically speaking, it was always about connecting the past with the present and always looking towards the future, right? And everything is the same. It's the more it goes down the line, the more that it just rings true, right? Even with the museum, it's you're looking behind to generally affect the present, but you're looking towards the future and being able to decipher it and write the course, right? So uh,
Sure.
I don't know.
Are there are there so you talked about, you mentioned using the memories and creating new art. Do you also collect items from your youth and from decades past as well, or is it more the newer style of creating?
All of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a monster Pez collection, right?
Yeah.
So I mean that's Jake's
Yeah.
cornerstone of a lot of their visual is Pez, right?
Sure.
Um,
Have you seen the Pez Outlaw
I
documentary?
did, and what's funny that I used to buy bootleg Pez from Steve Glue. His name's Steve Glue, right?
Did you really?
I bought Pez, and in fact, I also traded him Less Than Jake spark guns of the Son of Pezcore to Steve Glue. I traded
Yeah.
him those, and he would sell them at Pez events and things like that. And that's really how our band position from sort of like kind of kooks about Pez to like
Yeah.
embraced by Pez culture. It was Steve Glue who really sherpa'd us into the collector's arena. So good on him. Movie was good too, actually. The documentary.
It was fun. Yeah, it was fun. Super fun. Do you have a prized possession?
You know what? If you asked me that maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I would say things, but I really don't. There's a lot that I have that I love, but at the same time, if I didn't have it anymore, I wouldn't worry about it. Uh,
It's interesting how that perspective changes, with into adulthood, isn't it?
it's not necessarily adulthood. I think that if anything, uh, kind of COVID changed my headspace of like possession,
Mhm.
where like, man, that
Yeah.
stuff's cool, but toilet paper would be cooler, right?
Yeah. Hand sanitizer, toilet
Yeah,
paper. Yeah. That stuff's pretty
yeah,
good.
that would
Uh,
right, but it trains you in a different way, right? It makes you go, well, dude, like, what does this stuff really mean? It's cool, but and it means something, right? And I love it, but could I walk away and live without it? Sure, man. Like, uh,
yeah.
COVID proved that human connection is the thing that I can't live without. That's the prized possession, friends and
Yeah.
family, and being able to interconnect with that stuff.
Totally. I mean, I collect a lot of that kind of stuff myself, and but it's something about, I love I'm a collector. I love it. I love my stuff, but completely understand where you're coming from. It's like that
Yeah, don't get
the human
don't
connection and the experiences. The experiences are
yeah,
what
don't get
matter
me wrong.
the most.
I if I turn the camera around in this room, there's plenty of stuff for you to go. Oh, you got plenty of stuff, my friend, right? Uh, but uh, at the same time, it's not a prized possession, right? Like it's not. It's
Yeah.
cool and it's great, but if someone said, "Hey, dude, this would mean the world to me. Can I have it?" Mm, sure.
Yeah.
Like, you want it? Sure. Like you could have it. As long as it's not expensive art, then you could have it. If it's expensive art, you could fuck off. Like,
Yeah,
or pay
there is
me
there is a
for it. Or
line.
pay me
I've got
for it.
I've got my bourbon collection here at the house, and like we'll have somebody house sit for us when we go out of town. I'm like, help yourself to anything unless it's not opened. Leave it unopened. Don't open it.
Hey,
You know,
these things, don't touch these things.
right? Like over here, leave
Or
that
at least
alone.
leave $100 somewhere for it.
So you can, so I can replace it. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about tattooing to change the topic here, but Wonderland Custom
Yes,
Tattooing down in Gainesville,
correct,
correct?
sir.
Yes. So where does your love of tattooing come from? To the sense that, like, okay, yeah, musicians, musicians have tattoos, people in the punk scene have tattoos, but it's another thing altogether to have your own shop.
It just the further art, right? So again, if you look at it, it's same reason paper and plastic happened is the same reason why Wonderland happened, right? It's that, oh shit, like I want this. I want a reason to be able to go, hey, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this cool, like weird, flashy, and we're gonna have these like Taco Tuesday 2 year anniversary event, and we're gonna do creative and fun stuff because there's an outlet to do it. And uh, the guy who's my partner at Wonderland, he was tattooing a few of us. He lived in South Florida, and he was tattooing a few of us. Like, hey, like, uh, come up to Gainesville. We would spend the weekend, tattoo like 5 people, right? Go back down. And he wasn't really happy with his shop. And I was like, dude, we should partner together and figure out how to do something cool, something unique, right? Tattooing is a visual art, but being able to bring in modern art and bring in resin toys and bring in uh, a different element than just a standard. Hey, here's your neo traditional tattoo shop. Uh, and I think if you ever talk to anyone who's been in Wonderland, we achieve that uh, pretty well. I mean, there's art on the wall, pretty much floor to ceiling everywhere. And artists, modern artists like Alex Pardee, Camille Rose Garcia, Jeff Soto, uh, some really good famous folks are adorning our walls in there and inspiring people to get a little bit of a different type of tattoo and not the standard tattoo. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of standard tattoo ideas that come through. I want my dolphin on my ankle, or I want my infinity that says forever inside the infinity thing, right?
That breaks off into the
Yeah,
birds flying or
yeah, yeah.
whatever.
There's
You know,
plenty of
yeah,
those tattoos that happen, but there's plenty of art and inspiration on the walls to make a left at center point.
right. Yeah, definitely. It's on my list to check out next time I get down that way. I It looks awesome from what I saw online, so
It's fun.
definitely
It's
seems
fun
like
in
a good
there.
spot.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I can only imagine. Well, before I let you go, we talked a lot about the things that you have done over the years and all of these accomplishments and accolades and projects in your professional life. Is there something that stands out as being kind of the top of the list for you as far as what you've accomplished?
not in the sense of I'll kind of pose it in this way. When people go, what's the favorite song? What's the favorite song that you wrote? What's your favorite? Well, depends on the day, depends on my mood, depends on a whole lot of stuff, right? And uh, I've been lucky enough and sort of like blessed enough by people to do some cool shit and have some cool accomplishments and get some projects over the finish line. And depending on the day is depending on what one floats to the top. I'll say that like I'm uh, proud to be a dad and proud to be a husband first and foremost always, and then uh, I've done cool shit. It's you know a few if you're sort of asking. Les and Jake, who played main stage at the Reading Festival, 90,000 people, right? Uh, there's a break that's online. If you go look for it, there's a break in Gainesville, Rock City, where it's like sort of a halftime break, right? Uh, and to look out and audibly hear, 30,000 people singing it, right? But those same 30,000 people jumping in unison during that part, like it hits you in a wave, right? That we're just ridiculous dudes from Gainesville, Florida, but somehow we're lucky enough to have this moment and this break, right? And uh, it was cool. But if you asked me in 1993, what's your favorite moment? It would be that we were able to buy a van and travel outside of Gainesville to go play our first show outside of Gainesville in Daytona, Florida, right? So it's all these like micro steps and accomplishments that lead down the road, and depending on the day, like oh yeah, like what do you think? The museum, man, getting the museum open is that. And it's crazy. I never realized it, and uh, I'm not necessarily close with most of my family outside of my like sort of core that's here. But no one ever told me like, hey, like you should, practice gratitude. There's a whole bunch of people, all the cool shit that you were allowed to do, it was on the backs of a whole bunch of people that allowed you to do that, right? And
Yeah.
no one
Yeah.
ever told me that,
Yeah.
dude. No one ever said, hey, like, the reason why you can be on tour is because you have a cool wife who is taking care of your daughter at home. No one ever told me, hey, you wouldn't even be playing drums if your mom and dad didn't take $500 and buy you a drum kit. You wouldn't have gotten XYZ if these people didn't believe in you. You couldn't make a career out of music if people weren't believing in what you were doing and supporting you in every way possible, right? Uh, Dude,
Yeah.
no one
Yeah.
told me practice gratitude. No one ever said, dude, be thankful every day that people believe in you, right? And uh, over the last, it's like 3 years, it's been, I've been teaching myself that lesson a lot, right? That, yeah, without other people, I wouldn't be allowed to do a lot of things that I do, and for every day that I'm grateful for a lot of people every day that I did what I did and I can do what I do and what I'll do in the future, and sometimes I sort of like forget that and fuck up, and then there's other times where I take that to bed at night and go, fuck, I totally fucked up, right? And I let people down that believe in me and allow me to do what I do. So, like, if there's anyone that's taking anything away from my like ramble for the last hour, got to practice some like radical gratitude, man. Like, you have to appreciate the people while they're around that allow you to do what you do and allow you to be you. And in a world of like intolerance about like difference, having the people around that do believe in you and allow you to be you, they get rarer to find all the time. So like, cherish those people, man. It's practice some gratitude. A little thank you every now and then goes a long way.
There you go. I mean, it seems simple, but it's very profound because if you're not actively thinking about it, um, all of us tend to get wrapped up in the day to day. So that's great. That's great advice, and that's a great spot to kind of end the conversation. I think practice gratitude, be thankful for the people that allow you to do the things that you do. And man, this has been a great conversation. I can't thank you enough. I really enjoyed talking
Well,
with you here.
thanks. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. And with that, my friends, we've come to the end of the show. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks to Vinnie for being an incredible guest. I'm your host, Jesse Hubbard, and until next time, friends.